Hey guys, today I'm doing a quick outfitter tent review. Now this one was made by Alberta Tent Awning, but there's a lot of good manufacturers out there. I'm just going to walk through the tent before I get everything set up in camp here, just to show you some of the features I like with this specific tent and some of the things to look for. So let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, so the very first thing, guys, I'm going to point out is the door. Now you might have seen some that have zippers on them, but really what you want is something with a latch. And the reason for that is, unless you've got a perfect stand where you can always get the tent set up exactly perfect, it's very hard to set your tent up where the zipper works every time. This specific one has the cinches on the inside and out, so you can do up the tent on just one side or the other. The other thing this tent has is these straps here. Now what that's for is when you open these tents up, just grab this real quick, open it up, snap it up there, and of course you can cinch it up both sides, so you can do that. And of course you got the chimney, and the one place where the zipper is okay though is on the back wall, because that's in a solid panel, so you can always get that zipped. Now for this particular tent I cut poles and bought the fittings just because we do a lot of truck camping, so I'm able to just set this up easy. But this tent is also set up for like wilderness horseback hunts, where you can set up with just poles. I'll show you guys some of that in a minute. But I wanted to point out on the seams, they've got these heavy duty eyelet rivets in them on both sides of the walls. See over here as well. And really heavy duty, double reinforced seams. And you'll notice the same thing is on the roof. Now what those are for is the roof ones, you can hang a rope across, hang your stuff up to dry, some coat hangers, and that's really what these side ones are for as well, hanging stuff up. So usually I see guys with ropes strung across, and they'll hang your clothes to dry if it's wet out, and oftentimes it is. And it's just a really handy feature. And then also on some of these outfits that sell these things, you can buy like pantries and different things that'll hang off some of these eyelets or your poles, depending on how you buy it. All right, let's head outside here. All right, so you'll notice here, got the ropes all hanging from here. For those of you familiar with outfitter tents or wall tents, you'll know that that is to tie your pole. So if you're setting these up with poles, like wood poles and not the aluminum ones like I've got, basically a log would come across here, you tie it up, and the log kind of rolls down and puts tension to keep the roof tight. Works pretty slick. Just going to show you. And same on this side. And then on the roof, it's got all the ties for the ridge pole. So if you were doing this with like logs, you would tie that up to the ridge pole and set that up, and that would be the top piece of your tent, or to keep the top of the tent up. Now on this guy here, there is that gray stuff is like a fireproof material, so when the stovepipe goes through, it doesn't burn the canvas. And then that flap rolls up and ties up above it, so when you're using the fire, it stays out of the way, and then when it's not, you just tie it up to the bottom. Now one of the things I'm going to point out specifically, and I've seen some places, and you can see I didn't anchor the bottom, so now it's blowing up, so I'll have to do that in a minute. But one of the things specifically to look for is vertical seams on your roof. So you might see there's one manufacturer specifically that runs their canvas this way, and they've got one seam coming right through the middle lengthwise, but you don't want that. And the reason why is when it rains and the water comes down, the water only comes across the seam, this very small section of the seam. Whereas if you have it running that way, when it rains, that whole seam has potential to get water dripping through it. So if you see any of the old-time outfitters or the guys that are really knowledgeable on this stuff, they'll always tell you to get the seam vertical. It takes 3 pieces on a tent this size to go vertical. If you do it horizontal, they only have to do it 2 pieces, so there's just 1 long seam, but this is definitely the way you want to do it. Also, another thing to look for on these tents, you want to make sure all this stuff is double stitched, and this is a really well made tent and good quality. And some of the cheap ones you can get from China are kind of junky. The other thing too, almost every tent manufacturer will do it, but just make sure you got the plastic or this nylon piece for the ground skirt. If you have the canvas touching the ground and it rains, it'll wick the moisture up. So you always want that plastic ground skirt there, just to try to keep things from wicking up into your tent. So I'm just going to go ahead, put some more logs along the bottom of this. I do have tent pegs, but it usually doesn't get windy enough here. So that's some of the features on this tent. They're a good looking tent. Wall tents are highly underrated, I think, because they're expensive initially to buy it. But I mean, when you can walk in there, put up a full-size cot, it's just so much nicer than a tent where you're crawling in, sleeping on the ground. Something about swinging your feet out. And you don't have to do anything to waterproof these. The canvas is waterproof. All right, one other thing I was going to mention as well, with the tents that use the horizontal seam, I've seen lots of guys put tarps over top of their tent to keep them waterproof because of that. So I've never seen a guy have to do that with a tent with vertical seams on the roof. So to me, that's a huge deal. I would definitely do the vertical seams, but that's just my opinion. Just one more thing I was going to point out too. All the corners of these and along where these ridge poles may be, top, bottom there, they all have these extra reinforced corners and seams for wear. Some of the cheaper tents don't do that. Also, if you notice on the top, this is extra reinforced too, for allow for some of that rub from these poles. It just makes your tent last a lot longer. So that's something to look for in a good quality tent. And oh, one more thing here. You can see the ends here. These are sewn shut. You will see some tents that have that piece open, and you would slide your pole through the middle and come out the end, and then the tent just hangs on the pole like that, and it's not tied up with ropes. You do not want that, because when you're setting up with the wood poles, the wood coming through there with the wind and stuff, it will wear a hole through the top of your tent very quickly. And it might seem like it's quicker and easier at the beginning, but your tent won't last as long. Okay guys, that's it for my review of my tent. I hope you liked it. If you have any more questions, put them in the comments below. I've had a wall tent for a while. I really like them, and definitely worth getting, especially if you do a lot of truck camping. It's a little bit of an investment at the beginning, but it just makes camping so much more comfortable when you can stand up, when you can put some wood heat in it. And if you're a hunter, it's really handy. Get your stuff dried out after being outside for a few days and getting wet. So anyways, we'll see you guys in the next video.